please join me in welcoming Paul Meshanko.
This is probably the single most important thing we've done in this organization in the past 20 years. This is nothing less than a culture change. You can drive extraordinarily consistent business results by focusing on something like the emotional infrastructure of your workforce, and respect is a great platform for doing that.
Looking for the perfect speaker for your next conference or meeting? Finding the right presenter, one that is educational, credible, and entertaining, can set a positive tone for the entire event. Author, speaker, and business leader Paul Meshanko is guaranteed to do just that and more.
So how was work, Tammy? How was work today? And you say, fantastic, I really felt tolerated today. How many of you think that would be a ringing endorsement for an absolute best-in-class place to work? Not so much, right?
With over 2 decades of experience, Paul's unique ability to capture the attention and imagination of audiences of all sizes has made him a favorite with both event organizers and their audiences. His experience and credentials are impeccable. Having presented on 5 continents, Paul has addressed tens of thousands of people of all ages and backgrounds, effectively reaching almost any audience imaginable.
See, 5 years from now, you look around at the people you work with, they aren't going to remember what you said or what you did. The brain is very bad at those details, but here's what we're really good at. They're going to remember how they felt when they were around you. Something we call legacy. So the question is, what do you want your legacy to be with the people you work with?
Whether it's with business leaders, government officials, or nonprofit executives, Paul gets results. His humorous stories and down-to-earth style engage the toughest of crowds. His cutting-edge content on human behavior and neuroscience informs and creates a roadmap for change. But most importantly, he inspires his listeners to challenge themselves, to push aside the status quo behaviors of yesterday and reinvent themselves and their organizations for a more respectful and prosperous tomorrow.
When we treat people with respect, what we end up doing is triggering very solid biological processes. What happens is the brain releases 2 very important chemical compounds or neurotransmitters, serotonin and oxytocin. And it's kind of like, those are like the pleasure hormones for the brain. And whenever someone treats me in a manner that I feel is, quote, respectful, my brain is like, it's like it's just got a little shot of morphine or OxyContin or something, some feel-good drug, and I immediately associate that with a person. Who'd that come from? Oh, that came from you or you. And guess what my brain does? Now I have a cluster of neurons that associate you with that feel-good, and I want more of it. I want more of it right away. So what I start doing is I start reciprocating that behavior back. I start anything that I think I can do to nurture that relationship, I start to do. I pay attention. If I have information that I come across that I think will be helpful, I'll share it with you, right? Even when you don't ask for it. Why? Because you have positively primed me for that kind of interaction. So attract, engage, and keep the very best talent. Respectful work cultures are absolutely tied to our ability to engage our employees, period. Because one of the ways that we define engagement, we know that people who feel valued by their workplaces tend to be much more willing to invest emotionally in their business. When we treat people with respect, we make them feel valued. Better communication and learning within the organization. In respectful workplaces, information flies back and forth like rocket speed. It just zooms back and forth. There's absolutely no hesitation for people to share anything and everything they know with anybody else in the organization with whom they think it might be helpful. Improved client satisfaction. How many of you have ever had a phone, you've called one of the utility companies or somebody else and you got on the phone with somebody that you knew was not having a good day? When we have respectful interactions internally, it tends to become external also with anybody who's in a customer-facing position. Higher productivity and ultimately higher resilience. We make it through tough times together better when we have climates of respect. One of the biggest reasons organizations don't change is because their vocabulary won't let them. What do you think most people are walking around saying in their own? By the way, how many of you talk to yourselves? Yeah. There's always a group of people in the back who are kind of like, I don't talk to myself, but look at all these other crazy people around me. If you did nothing, if you were a fly on the wall and listened to the language in an organization, listen to the vocabulary being used, you would be able to tell within about an hour or two which organizations were adaptable and which weren't. Because it's that vocabulary. You see, the human brain doesn't really think in language. The human brain is powered by pictures and emotions. But it's language that triggers those pictures and emotions. If someone's saying, if we're trying to roll out a change in getting people to use a different email portal, and you hear in the predominant vocabulary or languages, oh, here we go again, this sucks, this isn't going to work. What pictures and emotions does that trigger? So we have to challenge our own vocabulary internally, but we also, in conversation with other people, we have to really watch and make sure that we're using the language that triggers the right pictures and emotions. Now, okay? Here's the good news about adaptability. One of my good friends, Dr. Ellen Weber from the META International Brain Research Center in Rochester, she said, great quote, "The brain changes as a function of where an individual focuses his or her attention. Every time I vent, I grow and link new brain cells for that purpose, and over time I get better at it." That's the myelination process. Every time we walk down an already existing highway, it's like laying more asphalt on that highway. But the good news is this. You can focus your attention on positive behavior and grow those connections as well. The brain can be wired for positive or toxic behavior. It's up to each individual to decide which will become more predominant. How many of you are thinking, that's great news? How many of you are thinking, that's bad news? That means I'm the one responsible for this. It really is, the topic, the actual term we use is neuroplasticity. In neuroplasticity, the research shows that our brains are almost fully flexible, plastic, if you will, able to develop new thought patterns, new skills, new attitudes, all the way up into our 80s or beyond, as long as we're willing to take ownership for that change. And we're willing to do things a little bit awkwardly and uncomfortably until we get to those better places. And the good news is you can do it for yourself, you can influence and lead other people, but you can't do it for them. This is kind of a do-it-yourself tool because you can't force people to change. Otherwise, they just become resistant and resentful.